Last week, we introduced you to Dina McQueen, and Dina wrote Finding Aster, chronicling her journey to adopt her daughter from Ethiopia. Well, this week, we're so pleased to welcome Shannon Bulman, adoption attorney and also adoptive mother of 2, to further advise prospective parents about the adoption process. Welcome, Shannon.
No, thank you, Dina.
Sorry. You and Dina actually know each other. We're going to get to that a little later.
Yes.
But, you know, she really shed a lot of light on a lot of things. In fact, one of the things that she noted, which I thought was so important, was that adoption should be a first choice, not a last resort. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective on this. And I wanted to ask you, what led you to adoption and how you feel about that message.
Well, I have a much beloved younger brother who was adopted as an infant. So when my husband and I were married, our plan was to adopt at least one child.
Wow.
But we experienced fertility issues. We thought we would have a child by birth first, and when we experienced the fertility issues, we decided to proceed with adoption right away.
And that's similar to what happened with Dina, where she initially wanted to have a child of her own and then realized, but then as she felt the fulfillment from having an adoptive child, she realized, this should have been my first option before I went through everything else I went through that led me here. So I want to ask you, what types of adoption are actually available to families if they are considering doing this?
Well, there are a lot of different ways that adoption can happen for families.
Okay.
There are international adoptions of children of all ages, and there are domestic adoptions, which are within the United States, of children of all ages. And the domestic adoptions can be children from the foster care system, either the Children, Youth and Family Department here in New Mexico or other state agencies across the country, or through private agencies.
So you have different options of how you want to go about doing this.
Right.
And it's nice to have those options, but I think that over the last 10 years, I've been hearing a lot about how things have really changed in the process. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Well, adoptions today are quite different from when I adopted my son, who's 12, and even from when I adopted my daughter, who is 8. I think the primary change has been the growth of the internet and the presence of the internet in adoption.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right, and unfortunately it's been, I think, a negative, had something of a negative impact. There are adoption facilitators who work nationally, and they're really business. Their focus is on business, not on the triad of adoption, which is the adoptive parents, the biological parents, and the child. So I have great concerns about that, and I've actually been working with a group of adoption professionals here in New Mexico, which is the New Mexico Adoption and Foster Care Alliance, and we are working to promote legislation to safeguard New Mexicans who are involved in the adoption process.
Well, that's good to know that you're taking some action, and I want to go back to that because you were saying that you have a son and a daughter, both that you adopt, but here's the thing that's so cool. Your son was born in New Mexico, and her daughter was born in China. So tell us how those adoption experiences differed going from New Mexico to China.
Right. It was really quite it was really quite amazing, and they were both very different experiences. My son was born in Farmington, and we were blessed to get to know his birth mother and his extended biological family and have a relationship with them.
What a beautiful family you have.
They are pretty special.
And what about your daughter? And
our daughter, we really wanted a daughter as the second child. So we, in China, most of the children who were available for adoption and are available for adoption are girls because of the political, social pressures in China. So we traveled around the world to get our little girl. And so she was well worth it.
Extra special. That makes it extra special. And I was curious, if being an attorney, if you felt that because you specialize in adoption, did that help you in the process of your own adoption?
I think it did in a lot of ways. I was comfortable with the paperwork and, kind of working through the process.
Sure.
Probably more with the adoption in China. It's very bureaucratic and a lot of paperwork. But more than anything, I was just a mom. I was looking for my kids. So.
That's right. and that's exactly what was meant to happen for you.
It is
beautiful. I mean, I love these stories, and I love to see that you find exactly what is meant to be for you. And And that leads me to ask you, because you went abroad, what kind of challenges did you find? I mean, you just said a lot more paperwork and documentation. In addition to that, what were some of the challenges by going internationally?
Well, internationally or domestic, I think adoptive parents have to be ready to be flexible and change and adjust their expectations and be ready. And, you know, I've seen that with parents who have children biologically as well. You know, things happen. And I think it's part of getting ready to raise children, period.
Absolutely.
But,
no question.
For example, with my daughter, right when we received the referral, which is the picture of her, when we totally fell in love with her.
Of course.
The SARS epidemic was raging at the time. So there was a question as to whether we would be able to travel. And I really was intent on being in China with her. And if I had to be stuck on one continent, I'd rather be there than here.
Oh, that's so sweet. And she'll always know that. And that's such a wonderful bond you'll always have. And I think other people out there are going to need to make sure that they always have the most reliable information. So how can they find that?
Well, particularly with the rise in the adoption business, what I call the adoption business, it's really important for families who are interested in adding to their family by adoption to do a lot of research. Really talk to a lot of different professionals, a lot of different agencies, and to make sure to work with professionals who are licensed in New Mexico or in another state.
That would be, I would say, number one, just to make sure you're doing everything by the book, really, literally by the book.
There are a lot of sad stories of families who have really, you know, been looking for their children and have had terrible experiences and really lost a lot of money in the process. And that's disheartening to me, because I've seen the happy, I've experienced
the good side.
right.
Well, that's why it's so good that you're here today, because then I think that's the whole point, is that you're showing people this is a wonderful experience and here's the best way to do it, because we want to make sure that they do go on the right path and have the good experience you've had. And actually, you and Dina, as we mentioned before, you will actually be speaking at the Infertility and Adoption Forum this Saturday at Indigo Baby in Santa Fe. So what issues will be covered at the forum?
Well, we'll have a number of different professionals speaking at the forum. We'll have a longtime adoption social worker, Nicole Eichen, and she will speak from the perspective of the social work perspective of adoption, and she brings a lot of experience about what options are available to families who are interested in adopting. We have a massage therapist who works on holistic infertility kind of approaches.
That's great.
And we'll have Dina, who's experienced her adoption from Ethiopia and is a lovely writer. Really, I think all but one of the speakers have experienced adoption personally and professionally. So I think that brings a different...
Oh, it sounds like a good experience. A lot of people will want to come out. And for more information how to find you personally, where do we need to go?
I'm at BulmanLawPC.com if anybody would like information. And there is also a wonderful resource for licensed New Mexico professionals through the New Mexico Foster Care and Adoption Alliance. And if you Google that, it's just a group of professionals who are working on best practices in the state of New Mexico.
Fabulous. Shannon, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for bringing all this information to us, and hopefully a lot of people will head out to meet you and Dina.
I hope so.
Great. And hi to the kids.
Yes. Hi, guys.
And coming up, Kristen braves the American International Rattlesnake Museum.